Mr. Shipman's class, Mr. Shipman's class. 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 Mr. Shipman's class, Mr. Shipman's class.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Mr. Shipman's class. I am Dr. Terrence Shipman.
And I am Miss Prudence Williams, his sidekick, I guess.
I ain't no sidekick. The beautiful and talented Miss Prudence Williams. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Hey, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shipman. I wanted to let the world know that if they wanted to see what you look like, and if they wanted to share in what you're doing, they can see you at TerrenceShipman.com or follow your handle, Terrence Shipman or T Shipman, on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. So please come and join us. Drop us a line. Wave at us. Throw the thumbs up. Whatever. We just want to hear from you. So we look forward to hearing from you. So Dr. Shipman.
Yes, ma'am.
Today's topic is very dear to my heart. We went to saw a movie called Never Heard, starring David Banner. It was an independent movie. Played in just about 2,000 theaters worldwide. Actually, I don't even think it left the United States. But the topic touched me as a teacher because I've experienced it. And the topic is incarcerated parents. And so it made me do some research. It was a story of a man who was incarcerated for most of his son's life. And he came out when his son is entering young manhood. He's 16, 17, liking girls, starting to kind of test the waters of behavior and acceptable behaviors. And this father is released from prison.
Right.
And has to build a relationship with his son. The title Never Heard is short for I never heard my father's voice. And the child never heard his father's voice because his father was incarcerated before he was born and stayed there most of his life. So I did some research, Dr. Shipman.
All right, let's hear it.
And I learned that in America today, there are more than 2.7 million children who have at least one parent who is incarcerated. And just for some real numbers, that is about 1 in every 28 kids. Yeah. So that means in most middle school and high school classrooms, which are slightly bigger, ranging from 25 to 33, one child, on average, in that room has a parent who is incarcerated. Disproportionately, African American children are represented in this number. That is 1 in 9 African American children, 1 in 28 Hispanic children, 1 in 57 white children in this country have a parent who is incarcerated. As a teacher, I think the saddest part of this whole thing is you can teach a child a whole year and never know.
Right. It's funny that you mention this. We have an election going on here in the United States. It's midterm elections. And one of the extra credits that I give it each year, and especially around this time, I say, hey, if you bring in your sticker, you can when you go vote, they give you a sticker saying that you voted. And I tell the students, ask your parents to give you the sticker or let your parents go with your parents to vote and bring me back the sticker and I'll give you 200 points extra credit. Some of the students were real quiet, so I waited till later when nobody was around and asked them. I said, hey, what's wrong? My parent can't vote. And it's strange to hear how many kids say their parent can't vote.
And just for those of you who don't know, many people who have served their criminal sentences in state jail, state systems are not allowed. They're disenfranchised. They're not allowed to vote because it is determined by states. Some states, you have a 3 to 5 year recuperation, show that you're going to stay out of trouble. Some states, you come right back out, and as long as you're not in prison, you can vote. Some states, you're never allowed to vote again after your incarceration, even if the incarceration was nonviolent and for only like 18 months. You lose your lifetime privilege to be a part of the democratic process. So that is sad. But as a teacher, not only what you say is sad, learning of it, and I got my study from Rutgers. It's 2014, and it is from what does that say, Dr. Shipman?
National Resource Center on Children and Families of the Incarcerated.
So if you want to look this up, please feel free to. Rutgers estimates that some of the problems, some of the impacts of these 1 in 28 kids in the classroom having an incarcerated parent is, first of all, they don't want anybody to know that their parents are incarcerated. Because what they learn really quick is that they are misperceived as being more criminal than other kids when you hear that, right, when the parents are. And so there's some shame. There's a lot of trauma, a lot of guilt involved, which when you think about it, your parents' actions very rarely had anything to do with you. Mm-hmm. But these kids carried this burden of feeling like they can't speak of their parents' problems. So we're talking about children under the age of 18 trying to solve this problem and carry this burden on their own because they don't feel safe to share it with their teachers, their peers, their counselors, anybody.
And I was lucky. I taught 2 brothers, and really it's 3. I won't mention their names, whose father was incarcerated. But the whole time I taught the first child when he entered my kindergarten class, I knew of the situation, and he pretty much is almost like a son of mine. He was always under my wing. I always watched out for him. Even after he left my kindergarten class, I kept an eye with him. Even today, I hold and play with his child. We still keep in touch. Even though his father is now out of jail, but I was there for him the whole time. It wanted to make sure, hey, you have people that really love you. Don't worry about it. We're here for you.
Well, I commend you on that. That is great. And I also have a story. Mine is more of a parent who got killed, but at the same time, I stay in touch with that child. And one parent's in prison, the other is killed. What killed the other parent? One parent is incarcerated for killing the other parent. So it's a real weird situation, but I do stay in touch with them. So also this research, just so that the listening audience can understand this impact of why these kids are traumatized. It says that 67% of the kids saw their parents handcuffed. 27% of these kids have seen a weapon drawn on their parents. 4.3% of these kids have seen their parents have a physical struggle with police officers. And 3.2 have seen their parents pepper spray. And so these kids, I can't imagine seeing anybody I love handcuffed. That in and of itself would be traumatizing. To see your parent pepper sprayed and fighting with the police, I can't even imagine seeing a gun drawn on anybody I love by the police. It has to be terrifying. And again, we're talking about people under the age of 18 who just are kids. And so this is one of the reasons 57% of them are more likely to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So with all of that being said, some things that you as the general public can do and understand. When you go into, and hopefully you are going in to help out at school, if you can volunteer, just go in and find out what's going on in school. Make your administrators, your children's administrators aware. Point out, ask. So, do you have any kids whose parents are incarcerated? Do you know if you have any kids whose parents are incarcerated? And if you do, what are you doing to offer mental and psychological support for these children?
Or even if you can't do that, go in and be a mentor. Be a mentor to the girls, because sometimes they might can't reveal that information.
Right.
Go into the schools and be a mentor for girls or boys. And usually those kids end up in the mentor programs. So in that way you can have an impact on their lives, something positive. Just be that spark in their life that they don't have.
Yes. Other thing, and this is a sad story, I did have students that I learned have parents that are incarcerated. And the way I learned that their parents were incarcerated was one day the kids were talking while I was teaching. And I went to reprimand them, and they were looking at their computers. I work in a county where every kid is assigned a computer. They have their own laptops. And they continued. They were like, wait, Miss Williams, wait. We almost finished. And I don't particularly take to being shooed off by children. So I walked to them to see what they were looking at. And the child very quietly whispered, "That's my mom." I looked at the screen, and they're in the state prison system pulling up prisoners. And sure enough, a woman who looked just like the child is on the screen. And she was like, "That's my mom." I was showing him that my mom's in prison. And he was showing me his dad who was in prison. That was a changing moment in my life, because what do you say? Close that computer up and don't look at your mama and your daddy?
Yeah, that might be the only time they can see them at school.
And I realized that those two kids had found somebody who they didn't feel shame with, and they didn't feel embarrassment with, who they could share. And so many times you hear about victims of whatever. A lot of the survival, a lot of the coping, a lot of the getting over the trauma is figuring out that you're not the only one.
That's true.
And so I just think as teachers, we have to remember all children do not come from a home with a white picket fence and two happy parents or two capable parents. Quite a few of our kids, and again, that is 2.7 million children, 1 in 28, and 1 in every 28 kids is dealing with an incarcerated parent. As teachers, one more thing you kind of got to be aware of, but I think it's worth it, because if we're not careful, just like the movie Never Heard showed, I mean, this child was saved. His father came back and was able to get in front of his child. But so many parents are unable to do that. And these kids continue the cycle of incarceration because they don't know how to be greater than their parents. And because they won't share their trauma and their fears with others due to fear of being shamed or being embarrassed or a stigma, they never learn that you don't have to be that. One other thing, and this one kind of threw me, and you mentioned this to me too as a truth. First of all, of course, make no attempt to place prisoners near their family.
Right.
And so in a lot of cases, kids never hear their parents' voice or lose touch with their parents because their parents are sentenced and placed in prisons that are 4 and 5 hours away. Children have no means of transportation.
No.
So as you vote, realize you want to vote for strong legal people, but people who also understand that incarceration affects more than the person incarcerated. It affects the family.
Right. I had so many students whose parents were incarcerated, and they will only see them maybe every 4 months because the mom had to save money for them to take a trip to go visit the parent. The other thing I wanted to touch on was to say, hey, teachers, really take the time to get to know your students.
Relationships.
I know that you got to meet the standards. You got to do this. You got to do that. But if you don't take the time to build these relationships, to figure out what's going on in school, what's going on in their home, take the time to just learn them.
I was told this, and I think we're ready to wrap this up, but I like that. And I was told this once by a veteran teacher, said, you don't teach English, you don't teach math, you don't teach science, social studies, music, or art. You teach the children sitting in front of you. And I think a lot of times what you're saying is teachers, including myself, need to be reminded you teach the children in front of you, not the content.
There you go.
And to teach the children in front of you, you got to build a relationship.
Strong relationships.
Yes. Honest relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Shipman,
Yes, ma'am.
we got some questions.
Let's go.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
All right. Here we go. What are the challenges that kindergarten teachers face nowadays, and how can they successfully face them?
I think one of the major challenges kindergarten teachers are facing nowadays is they're rushing these kids through. They're pushing them through the process. They trying to hurry up and get them to read, do read and write the math. Go to first grade and you got all those skills ready. I think that is one of the biggest mistakes we're making. Kindergarten is about a readiness. If that child is not ready, you cannot push them. They're not going to learn until they're ready. Or one day it just hit. It's going to hit them one day. It surprised me. I think one of the most beautiful things I love listening to is hearing a child read for the first time. Or sounding out a word, saying and, can. And before you know it, they say, I can read, can. Stop rushing these kids. Stop thinking everybody's supposed to learn how to read and write and do math by the time they go to first grade. That's what really first grade is supposed to be for. First and second grade. Kindergarten, if they can do it, it's fantastic. If they can't do it, guess what? It's okay.
Also, I want to add, and I never taught kindergarten. I just see it as a middle school teacher as one of the drawbacks. Hey, parents, teachers, administrators, get our students from in front of screens. They're on their parents' phones enough. At school, it should be about discovery and inquiry. It should not be about a keyboard or a touchscreen. One of the things that I see a lot, and I've read into about childhood obesity related to this and everything. Our kids aren't moving enough. Let them go discover the world. In many counties in the state of Georgia, recess for elementary schools, particularly kindergartners, has been taken away. And
or reduced down to 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
It take you 15 minutes to get outside with a bunch of kindergartners.
And that is so unfortunate. And I think the opportunities for learning on their own and building the desire to learn and to figure out what you love. Like I learned at a very young age, I like to see how things worked. I was a kid who took flowers apart to see what was under the petals. Wanted to know what that yellow stuff was. You know, all of these things. We got to give kids a chance to play and learn through play. It is one of research shows play is one of the strongest ways young people learn. And we just got to let them do a little bit more and get the screens, push this. And I'm normally a computer. Dr. Shipman, you know that. I'm normally all about the computers. But I honestly, sometimes when my son was going through kindergarten, I wish they would push the screens away and just let him touch. When we were at home, a lot of it was taking a Jell-O cup and dumping it on and squishing it through your fingers and talking about how it felt. Using words, using all of your senses to learn about your environment, to develop questions. Basically, the engineer practices that we want them to do in middle school and high school can be best taught in elementary school through play.
Let's go back to just the simple art form of discovery.
Yes.
That's it.
So we got time for one more. Okay? And it is... I market through, how do you market your books, and do you read your books at school?
Yes, I'm going to start here. I'm going to start by saying yes, and I guess what he's saying yes to. Yes, I market, I do do school visits. I haven't done one in a while because the book tour, we've been so busy on the weekends doing other things. But marketing the book, I tell you, the best thing to do, make sure you're on all social media. Now, I'm not going to say all. And you have to take one and get really good at it. I'm good at probably 3 of them. And really 4. That's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm really good at those. Facebook especially. That's like probably my specialty. I do email marketing sometimes. It's okay. I hate spamming people, but sometimes, hey, you have to do it. Another source of marketing for me is this podcast. That is one. Reaching a wide audience. We're probably in 30-something countries around the world. Another thing I do on the website, www.terrenceshipman.com, is the blog. The blog reaches hundreds of people across the world. So I use all these different methods to try to market. It is one of the hardest things to do, and you never know if it works or not. After a while, this work, try it again, it don't work. So every time you do something, you're more so just learning and playing with different pieces and seeing what works and what not works.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shipman. You took my closing line. I was supposed to tell all the social media sites that you're available, but you kind of hit them. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So you hit all of those. Also, you hit their webpage, TERANCESSHIPMAN.com, TerrenceShipman.com. So it has been great world talking to you. Hopefully we can remember our children need a whole lot more than content, standards-driven lessons. Sometimes they need a compassionate heart, and they need a teacher who understands that the world is not good for them sometimes. And so hopefully this is at least this broadcast has given you something to think about. And maybe you'll look at the worst student in your class and ask yourself, what lies at home for him? What isn't he telling me? And be a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more patient, and build a relationship that may, like Dr. Shipman has done, affect the child for the rest of their lives.
And in closing, I want to say thank you, Ms. Williams. And following that, as I always say in closing of this podcast, hey, I am special, I am smart, I am somebody. See you next time, world.
Bye-bye.
Mr. Shipman's class, Mr. Shipman's class. 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 Mr. Shipman's class, Mr. Shipman's class.